Welcome into another episode of Note News. Today we're here to talk about some young players on the Blues. Going into this 2024-25 season, I think we kind of expected the Blues to compete for a playoff spot for sure, but we expected their younger players to be a big reason why they were in it. We're over halfway through the season at this point, and the Blues are in the mix for the second wild card in the West, but young guys like Zack Bolduc, especially Alexandre Texier and some others, aren't seeing as much playing time as we expected. How do these young players look this season? How are they performing? And would the Blues benefit from seeing them play more? We're going to talk about all that and more on this episode of Note News. Welcome into another episode. It's John and Alec with you as always, here for big episode number 50. Hooray! Congrats.
We did
Congrats,
it.
Alec. We did it.
Yeah.
Big number 50. So we're here to talk young guys like to do a lot. Um, hey, that's pretty cool. Number 50. So thanks to everyone that's tuned in so far. We appreciate all the support um, and hope it'll continue. So if you're enjoying what we're doing, or if you're new to Note News, we're a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week. We talk about all things Blues, their play on the ice in the NHL. We talk about prospects, young players in the system. We talk about rumors, like who should they trade for, uh, maybe free agency signings in the offseason. We talk draft, all kinds of stuff. So if you enjoy that stuff or you're interested in all that content, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which helps us out a whole lot. We appreciate all that. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well if you want to follow and rate wherever you listen. Appreciate that. And we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok if you like the socials and want to follow along with us, see our graphics and extra posts, and know when we're going live. That's where we post about it. So be sure to follow us there. And we appreciate all that. But Alec, I want to start real quick with one of the bigger stories, if not, I guess it is the biggest story in the NHL right now. This
Yeah.
three-way trade, I know it's not Blues centric, but it is interesting, and I do want to talk about
It's
it a little.
huge.
Big three-way trade between the Carolina Hurricanes, the Colorado Avalanche, and the Chicago Blackhawks? Question mark. The Avalanche acquired Martin Necas and Jack Drury from Carolina. They also acquired a 2025 second round pick and a 2026 fourth rounder. And Carolina got Mikko Rantanen, and I think a younger player, Nils Juntorp, I think is how you pronounce it. But Mikko Rantanen is the big one, and they also got Taylor Hall from Chicago. Chicago's retaining some salary. I think for the Rantanen contract, they're retaining I want to say somewhere in the realm of $4.5 million if I had to guess. But they get a third round draft pick. What's your reaction to this trade? Rantanen to Carolina is the big one. Necas back the other way, Jack Drury, and then Taylor Hall to Carolina as well. What do you think?
This is the biggest trade I can remember in a long time. I'm not sure. Like, people are giving a Jack Eichel comps in 2021. I see that. Yeah, I mean, this is just a huge move for both franchises.
Yeah.
In the I'll go Carolina first so we can finish in the Central. I mean, Mikko Rantanen is one of the you name it, that this many number best player, excuse me, gosh, in the
Yeah.
NHL right now. Like, I probably put him
Yeah.
top 20, maybe top 30, but
I think I think he's higher than that.
top 10
Yeah.
could potentially.
Yeah.
There's so much good talent. I don't know. Regardless, that's not what I'm here to discuss. Mikko Rantanen is an amazing hockey player, one of the premier talents, and he's a goal scorer, and he's a consistent goal scorer. And so much of what Carolina's sort of stories have been so far is how disappointing that they are in the playoffs because they don't score goals. They always
Yeah.
do exceptionally at preventing goals. But I mean, Mikko Rantanen is, I mean, it's, I can't even call it a Band-Aid fix. It's like I can't think of a good analogy right now, but it's like cutting bread with a lightsaber. Like, this should be really exciting for Carolina fans. I know, as both of us are Um, we've watched Carolina games in the past, and especially on either nights when the Blues were not playing or were unfortunately not in the playoffs as of more recent years. Um,
Yep.
I mean this, and they're having him play on the first wing, which is Aho. Oh, who's the other winger? Rantanen, obviously. I will find this in a second, but that is just terror. I think it like is not crazy to call that the best first line in the NHL. I know like
Yeah.
Colorado is really special still, but Landeskog and now Ranton is gone. Um, oh, Svechnikov got
Yeah.
demoted
Svechnikov.
apparently,
Oh
but
yeah,
now
yeah.
it's
He's
Jackson
yeah,
Blake, a young guy who's been playing really well for them. Regardless,
yeah,
like their top talent right now, Carolina's, is as good as anyone in the league, and with their still it's not like world beating like it used to be, but still solid defense and great goaltending.
yeah,
What a move for Carolina.
yeah. If Brandon can't go to the Blues, I think I'd pick Carolina for him to go to. I'm a Carolina fan as well, more so Blues. Don't worry, everyone. But I'm a Canes enjoyer, so it is pretty exciting. Yeah, like you said, they one of their biggest criticisms is the lack of like a finisher. Boy, did they get that with Rantanen. Didn't give up a whole lot either to get him. I mean, it's like it's crazy. Um, but for one thing, I'm glad that Rantanen is not in the Central anymore. The Blues are getting ready to play the Avs pretty soon, and this will help a little with, with that matchup, I guess. But real quick before we start to talk about more Blues centric stuff, can we talk about Chicago?
Yes, I want to get to the Central Division part of this discussion for sure.
Yeah, like what? What is Chicago doing? I mean, like, what are your thoughts here? Chicago is paying essentially for a third round pick. They're paying like four and a half, like I said, somewhere in there. I mean, like, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, um, I kind of want to get to the Colorado stuff first, and then I'll get to
Okay.
the Chicago
Yeah, yeah,
side because I believe me, I'll go off on that.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah, from Colorado's perspective, I do think it's really interesting that they didn't see Rantanen as someone they could extend. He was asking for $14 million. Shout out Matt in the chat. A year, and that's a high price tag, and it's definitely arguable that he's worth that. I I mean, I think probably just because the Blues are where they are. Like if he were on the Blues, I would totally pay him 14 mil a year. But that's because he so perfectly would fit like the needs of this team. You know, Colorado deciding not to make him a $14 million a year player, it makes sense from their perspective. It's also really interesting that they didn't want to pay him that because Rantanen was a part of their identity. So for them to essentially
Yeah.
be worried about essentially to me it signals that they're worried about his future, and maybe they know something that we don't. So I don't know. I'll
Yeah.
be curious to see how the off-season contract discussions go for Mika Rantanen. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, for them, they also get a 25-year-old Martin Necas, who is a young, near-ish point per game player at 25 years old. So that's a young piece. Now he's only got, I believe, a year and a half left. So that was another player they need to extend, but probably looking more along the lines of I don't know, between 6 and 9 million a year. I'm not, to be honest, I'm off the top of my head, I'm not super familiar with Natchez' game, but he's a young player that'll give him at least another year after this, which it feels like their window is closing. So to make this kind of nuclear move signals that maybe they're worried about this year or that they really think that they can compete into the future. And I just don't know with Colorado, like Landeskog is already seemingly on his way out of the league. Still a phenomenal player when he plays, but he just plays so little. Obviously, McKinnon and McCarr are exceptional. Mackenzie Blackwood has
Yeah.
been an exceptional goaltender for them. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm not saying that I think as of right now that Colorado's future is doomed, but I think it's a risky move for them. So it's surprising to me that they did it.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely were skeptical they'd be able to retain him, like or re-sign him in the offseason. Extension talks weren't really going anywhere. I'd be surprised though if we didn't see Colorado do something else. Like I think there's something else coming for them because, like you said, they acquired two goalies, Scott Wedgwood and Mackenzie Blackwood, um, earlier this season, and so they're obviously trying to compete, and the window is still open like you said, McKinnon and McCarr. McCarr is due for a payday soon, I believe, and so that's part of it, right? That's part of why they're probably looking to move Rantanen. But yeah, it is crazy.
And I just cannot believe that Chicago. I mean, it totally makes sense that they were the third team involved, but what they like did for this deal just is unbelievable. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. I like 30 every other NHL team right now is laughing. Every other NHL GM right now is hysterically laughing to themselves because of the Chicago uh, part of this trade.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what is how could they even conceive to yeah, so like you said, they technically Rantanen was traded to them, and then they traded Rantanen to Carolina, retaining I think it was 50% of his salary, which yeah, as you said, was
hmm
I think somewhere around 4 million.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. 50% is
and
4.6. Yeah, and they
mhm,
acquired a 2025 third round draft pick from Carolina, and they gave
yeah,
up Taylor Hall. That's it.
and they lost a player. They retained salary. They paid down Rantanen to lose their like second or third best player or I don't know. I just I can't even conceive it. And then to get a third round pick. Like it's not even that they were paying for like a high draft pick that they could use to get an impact player. They
hmm
paid $4 million for a lottery ticket and to get one of their best players out of Chicago. I mean,
Yeah,
Taylor Hall was going to be on his way out of Chicago. He was
yeah,
playing well in
yeah,
Chicago and is an aging forward. Like that makes sense. But for them to broker this deal and this is the return they get, it's like
yeah,
an F minus minus trade for them. The best possible return they could get for helping two contenders, one of them in their own division, is like is it I mean it's a third round pick and there have been some exceptional third round picks in you could certainly point to
yeah. Right.
obviously, but they are the exception not the rule. The
hmm hmm
everyone would be paying more for third. That just doesn't make sense. Um, like the best, the realistic outcome for Chicago. I just don't understand how this deal went down. They had these two teams say, we are going to swap Natchez and Rantanen plus some other pieces, but we need someone to help facilitate this. And the Chicago Blackhawks were so happy to get a phone call that they were still like smiling and wagging their head before they even comprehended what kind of deal they just made. Because all they received for this was like a middling level prospect who might play an entry level contract in the NHL.
Yeah,
It's just and yeah, like you said, paying 4 million, getting rid of their best player, it's just inconceivable. I mean,
crazy.
this is why like people talk about the Blackhawks in such a different tone or ilk outside of Chicago sports fans just sort of having a reputation is because every like first of all, how does a self-respecting GM do this? But also, how does a franchise so consistently fail to make the right move and produce a winning product? Like they trade like
Yeah.
if you imagine some of the trades they made, trading away like Panarin or other important pieces like Saad when he was sort of young and in his prime,
hmm
the team that they still could have fielded into the back half of the 2010s would still have been very competitive. But instead,
Yeah.
they made every wrong move. And now they have Connor Bedard, who is touted as the
Yeah.
next Sidney Crosby. And honestly, kind of looks the part. He just is surrounded by no talent. And what they
Yeah.
do is they don't take a forward to help him in the first round when the top of the draft is just so stacked at second overall this past summer. They've been
Yeah.
drafting poorly, have such a thin prospect pool. They have really, really good top end talent because they've been picking at the top of the board for so long, but such a thin prospect pool to supplement Bedard. So changes aren't going to come from internally. And so they make a trade to get better and they lose the trade that they facilitated. Like, this is, earlier today online, people were comparing them to the San Jose Sharks. Everyone seems to love the Sharks, hate the Blackhawks. The Sharks have drafted pretty decently well, have made good enough trades or value signings to put together a competitive product, even when their roster stinks. The Chicago
Yeah.
Blackhawks only know how to make a roster that stinks.
Yeah, this is a confusing move for like a team that's trying to work out of a rebuild, right? Like it's time to add on to Connor Bedard and put together a team that can start to compete. It is confusing. It seems like a step back and not like the full return that they probably could have gotten by just trading Taylor Hall. Um, it is weird. But let's go ahead and get into what we're here to talk about today. I
You
think that's
gave me a
enough.
chance
I
to
know,
dunk on the
yeah.
Blackhawks, and
Yeah. By
you
goodness
take
you
my
took it.
opportunities.
Yeah, no, you got to do it when it comes. It's what the rivalry is all about. So,
Let's talk
we're
Blues.
here to talk. Let's talk Blues. We're here to talk about some young players. So specifically, a big one that sort of has inspired the discussion we're here to talk about today is Zack Bolduc. This is a season where we thought it would be, a transition to some of the younger talent that the Blues have, right? A transition away from, you know, like the Brandon Sods of the world, who we expected to be traded this season, even before the season. That's someone that we picked out as a potential trade candidate. A transition away from that, like guys like that, towards guys like Bolduc, who are serviceable NHL players. Um, you know, it was always going to be tough, but we expected them to compete for a wild card. And I think preseason, if I'm recalling some of our conversations correctly, we expected the younger players like the Bolducs, the neighbors of the world, even Texier, who they acquired this offseason. We expected those younger, more energetic players to be a big reason why they could be in the wild card race. I think we expected those guys to take a step forward. Bolduc is someone that we picked to score 10 plus goals preseason. He's like kind of on track for that. I think he'll need to pick it up. But the issue here is that these younger players aren't seeing a lot of playing time. Obviously, like Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg are. They've been fantastic. Um, but like Bolduc has the third fewest average, the third lowest average time on ice on the team. He's got 12 minutes and 12 seconds average time on ice this season. Texier has the fourth least. He's 12:27. Tyler Tucker hasn't been here long, but he's got 12:30. And Perunovic is at like 14:37. Like young guys like that who we expected to be given more chances. And I think it's understandable as the Blues have started to um, sort of climb back into the wild card race. I think it's understandable for them to lean more on the more experienced guys, right? As the playoff dream and the playoff goal becomes more and more realistic, although we could, get into that whether that's still true at this point, but I think it's fair for them to look to rely on more experienced guys. But the confusing thing is that some of these guys, and like I said, Zach Bolduc in particular, looks really good and looks like he deserves more playing time. I think the big question that we want to talk about today is, should he be getting more playing time, and what would that look like? Like going into the season, how big a role did you expect some of these young players to play versus what we're seeing so far this season? Sort of how is what we're seeing, how has what we've seen this season, how does that measure up with your preseason expectations for the young players in terms of playing time?
In terms of playing time, it's certainly been disappointing. And really, I think the biggest thing is as we went into this year as an evaluation year, we kind of hoped that if if a young player was stepping up and proving their worth, sort of like Dylan Holloway has been, they would get the time. But I think
Yeah.
particularly with Zack Bolduc, arguably he has really massively stepped up, but isn't receiving the time. And guys like well, okay, Toropchenko is one thing, and Prunovic too, I think, because they've been with the organization and on the NHL team for a couple years now and sort of have gotten their looks, kind of know what they are. But like Tucker, Kessel when he was up, and Texier, we didn't know what they would look like coming into the season playing
Mhm.
on this team. And yes, seeing them still like it is tough because you don't necessarily want your every young player to get an extended run in the first line because that's just like
Right.
isn't how you win. You kind of have to earn it. But
Mhm.
especially with a guy like Zach Bolduc who has been earning it and hasn't received the rewards of his work, it's frustrating.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like Texier is another one who we'll talk a little bit about. He's someone that we were really excited going into the season about when the Blues acquired him for a fourth round pick. We thought the Blues got away with highway robbery on that one. Um, but I think I think we should probably start with Zach Bolduc. I mean, he's the one who has sort of inspired this conversation, and I think he is like the main guy when it comes to this conversation. Um, I think sort of making the case for Zach Bolduc, like the quantity isn't quite there. He's got 15 points, 5 goals, and 10 assists in, I want to say, 39 games. Yeah, 39 games played. Um, he would have a whole lot more, I feel like, if he was playing more, obviously. But still, he's tied for 10th in points, ninth in goals, 10th in assists on the team in those limited minutes. I mean, he's been very effective in the limited minutes that he's gotten, in the limited looks that he's gotten on the ice. Um, but as I said, the quantity isn't quite there. So looking at some of his rate stats to see how he measures up with some of his teammates who are getting more playing time, he still looks fantastic. He is fourth on the team in points per 60 at 1.78. He's third in assists per 60 at 1.23. He's generating a lot of quality chances, a lot of good looks. He's second in individual high danger chances for per 60 at 357. Fantastic. And then that's just him as an individual. That's not even accounting for how the team around him performs when he's on the ice. Looking at his on ice rate stats, so how the team performs in his minutes per 60 minutes, he is number one on the team in goals for percentage at 68.75. He's seventh in expected goals percentage at 52.45. He's second in high danger goals for percentage at 64.21. He's generating a lot more the Blues are generating a lot more high danger goals with him on the ice than they're giving up, like a lot more. Um, and he is first in on ice PDO at 1060. Um, I mean, what are we seeing here? I mean, this is he as good as these stats suggest, do you think? Um, and why isn't he playing more? I think that's sort of the big question here.
Yeah, that is the huge question here because, like I said, he's certainly earned the right to get more time. I do think some of the like assists or points per 60,
Hmm.
it could be with more minutes those numbers would go down. But still, regardless, I don't mean that to say that he hasn't deserved more playing time. I just don't know that I would expect
Yeah,
him to be the
yeah, yeah,
fourth best player on the team if he did was playing on the first line the whole year. But
yeah,
maybe. I mean, you don't know. And it kind of feels like this is the move we're going to get. I mean, Monty in his presser after the game was really incensed and sort of saying like a change has to come. We had kind of seen mid-game substitutions of Bolduc getting more ice time, and it kind of feels like this would be the change that has to come, unless he's just talking about re-switching the first and second lines. Which hey, 1-1 with that lineup, 0-1 with this one unless you want to
yeah,
go to the whole season record. Anyways, um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, Bolduc should be playing with Robert Thomas, whether that's on the first line or the second line. I think that's his position at this point. Neighbors has just not really, as another young player who has gotten the time, they really put a lot of trust in a 22-year-old. Yeah, 22-year-old after a breakout
Yeah.
season last year, to repeat, and he's kind of scoring goals, but just his overall play is really bad, especially in elevated minutes. So it feels like Bolduc has to be the guy,
Yeah.
as he has. The other part of this too is his finishing has been really solid, and that's been such a struggle for this team outside of the second line. He really has such. I mean, I know I remember this. I'm sure no one else does, but one of the first things I said on one of these episodes, talking about Zack Bolduc specifically, was that he just has such a unique, wicked shot. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just like something that can't be coached. Like that, it's just louder than anything else, and it just looks and feels stronger. You know, it pops off the tape in a way that like weight room practice can't get. Like he just has a unique
Right.
ability for a strong shot, a strong wrist shot. Honestly, like I would like to see. I want to see them unleash that. Truthfully, honestly, like I want to see him on the power play, on the face-off dot, like on the when they're set up down
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in the slot area. I mean,
Right.
as sort of that maybe Alex Ovechkin role. I don't know that we've seen a ton from
Yeah.
his one-timer ability, but theoretically, it feels like he should have it. At least try it out, because
Yeah.
truthfully, I mean, our second power play unit. I was going to say something
Both
really bad.
both
Is
power play
bad.
units. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
first one's gone quiet too. So I mean, why not? And like we've been saying, Bolduc has earned it.
Yeah, for sure. You sort of hinted at it a little bit there, and shout out to Matt in the chat. Matt tunes in a lot. Thanks, Matt. I think we can just start referring to him as Matt in the chat. It's got a good ring to it. But yeah, that he looked pretty
No
solid.
chat without Matt.
Um, there's no chat without Matt. He did look good last night. He was playing on a line with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich. This is a tweet from Jeremy Rutherford, who writes for the Athletic. So shout out to him. So they at 5-on-5 last night had a total of 11 minutes and 48 seconds on the ice last night. They had a 68% Corsi. They had 7 scoring chances for versus 4 against, 5 high danger chances for versus 2 against. Like they looked good. And I think you know where this conversation is interesting is Zach Bolduc for like like a big percentage of his minutes. I'm not sure the exact percentage, but He's played 210 minutes of his total. Hold on, let's see, 475. So a little under half, but close to half. That many minutes he has played with Oscar Sundquist as his center. The results, like the under the hood analytical stuff, they look okay for those two on the ice. But how do you think he would benefit from playing alongside a better center? And then, like, probably, like we said, Robert Thomas probably, but also we've talked recently about Robert Thomas as a guy who maybe could benefit from some better line mates. We think Robert Thomas is the kind of center, the best, one of the best playmaking centers in the league. And so it shouldn't 100% matter who he's on a line with. It matters a little, but he should be able to elevate the people around him, is what I'm saying. But that being said, I think he would benefit from having someone who's playing as well as Zach Bolduc alongside him instead of someone like Brandon Saad, who's having his worst season in probably since he came to St. Louis. Like, A, how do you think Zach Bolduc would benefit from that switch? And B, how do you think someone like Robert Thomas would benefit from that switch?
I mean, it's it's so tantalizing, and especially with just I keep going back to Monty's comments about a change has to come.
Yeah.
Maybe I could totally just be what's the word, like hoping myself into this, into believing
Yeah.
too hard, but it just feels like this has to be what he's referring to. Um, but anyways, yeah, I mean, but Thomas has so consistently played on a line with guys sort of similar to Bolduc.
Hmm.
Vladimir Tarasenko, renowned sniper. Pavel Buchnevich, sort of more of a defensive sniper. And Jordan Kyrou is sort of like a Dylan Holloway type. Funny, they're on a line now, but very speedy and good with his body.
Hmm.
So speed and shot ability are the two things that Thomas has really shown success. I mean, he's shown success throughout his career because he's Robert Thomas, but he's really been able to work off of when he was playing with Kyrou, rush chances with him, or set up a one timer right through the slot area because he's just an exceptional passer to someone with the
Hmm.
wicked one timer. And I really feel like Boldu could now the speed part of it I'm not so sure, but definitely like with his shot and Thomas's playmaking ability, yeah,
Yeah.
I want that all day. I do think there is a genuine question about um, Pavel Buchnevich's role in all of this
Right.
because arguably he's a little bit redundant with Zach Bolduc. I don't think the defensive metrics love Bolduc. Eye test is okay. I know he blocks a decent amount of shots, but yeah, Buchnevich has been okay defensively this season. But yeah, their skill sets are a little bit redundant, so you wonder if there's something else there. And honestly, like Buchnevich just hasn't still been producing like much at
No, he
all.
hasn't been himself.
At all. Ever since I don't even know, like really since the Anaheim blowout, still since then. Um,
Yeah, probably.
so I almost wonder like if maybe you continue to try Booch on like a third line and maybe then you'd still have to put Thomas with someone like a Sauter or Jake Neighbors, excuse me.
Hmm.
But I just really think and now I'm going a little bit off of Zach Bolduc here, but I really think there was some merit to what we saw with the one of the best lines in the NHL playing as our first line.
Yeah.
But regardless, totally the team would benefit from Bolduc playing with Thomas. I think Thomas would benefit. It's tough to know like if his confidence is just shaken for this season, if he'll be totally like elite as he had been. It seems like Buchnevich is kind of going through the motions this season. Um, but yeah, I really think there's no reason not to. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the specific quote from Jim Montgomery um, last night was, I'm going back to Jeremy Rutherford here. We're going to start doing things differently. We have to. We had a great crowd. Our fans were ready to rock. I thought we were going to have a great start, and it didn't materialize. He went on to say maybe we do morning skates at Centene. We've got to disrupt the rhythm somehow so that we have a little more urgency. Yeah, like something's got to give, and I think shaking it up a little bit would do that. Like maybe playing a guy like Zack Bolduc every night instead of just some nights or most nights. Playing him every night would help shake things up a little bit. Give the young players that earn the minutes that they deserve. Don't play guys that don't deserve those minutes over them. And so I mean I think that would shake things up pretty well. And I think Zach Bolduc is pretty solidly the best example of that. Um, in like in the Blues' defense, the frustrating stretch has really been like I don't know. I want to say over the past like week or so, maybe week and a half. These past few games have been tough. Really, since that was it the loss to Utah? Um, I think I want to say that was where things sort of have taken a dip. Like before that, they
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
were they
yeah.
were yeah, before that they were sort of accumulating a lot of expected goals. Like the expected goals differential was shooting way back up. It got to its lowest in like late December, and since then it's been climbing pretty steadily. And really, since that loss to Utah, it has taken another dip, and that's been tough to see. Um, but they were climbing back in it, and it was starting to work a little. Now they're in a pretty tough situation. I think they're 5 points out of that wild card spot, and Calgary has 3 games in hand, so it's not looking great. Um, but I mean, honestly, even against Dallas last night, they looked okay. They were dominating the expected goal game. They were generating shots at a decent rate and good shots too. They were in high danger areas for a lot of shots. They were crowding the goalie. It was just like who is the Stars' backup again? Whoever he is was playing out of his mind and shut the Blues out. It's like Casey. His name escapes me. But anyways, like playing like
Oh, it's
a
Smith. Yeah.
DeSmith. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Playing like a like a top goalie in the NHL all of a sudden.
And
It's
we've seen
crazy.
this
Yeah, for sure. It happens to the Blues a
with other
lot,
backup
unfortunately.
goalies. I mean, yeah.
And I think part of the issue, and this is something that you talked about, is their lack of finishing ability. They're starting to miss a lot of shots again. This is something that we talked about early season as maybe a reason for their struggle. We pointed to players like Jordan Kyrou specifically, just missing a lot of shots, shots off target, um, not generating shots on goal at a decent rate. While they got into good areas last night, they still had 15 total missed shots, and so they're struggling to finish. They continue to struggle to finish, or I guess you know early season they were struggling, and now that's starting to resume over the past few games. They've started missing a lot more shots, and like you said, Zack Bolduc is someone who's uh, goals percentage, like comparing his goals to his expected goals, it looks sustainable and it looks like he is like a sniper type. And he's a solid finisher, like you said, and giving him more playing time is only going to help at this point. Like ride the young guy while he's hot. Um, it just doesn't make sense to me
Yeah.
why he's not earning more
Totally.
playing time. And I don't want to point fingers at Jim Montgomery because maybe we'll start to see that a little bit more. I want to give it a little bit more time. I think maybe playing him um, alongside Robert Thomas last night is an indication that maybe he's starting to do that and give Bolduc that playing time. So I think I'm reserving judgment on this Montgomery decision for just like a little while longer because I think we might be starting to see that turn around a little bit. But still, it's frustrating that it's sort of taken this long for Bolduc to sort of get that attention. But anyways, yeah, I mean, last
Yeah.
night he played 15 minutes, and looking back, that was that was his second most minutes played all season. Um, was 15, almost 16. So maybe we'll start to see that change, and I hope we do. But Zach Bolduc has earned those minutes, and I really want to see him play. And I think it would help. I mean, one of the goals that the Blues had this offseason was to get faster, right? They were really slow last season. They brought in Dylan Holloway, who's so fast. They brought in Matthew Joseph, who was really fast as well. They're still like near or below league average when it comes to top skating speed. They're still kind of slow, but Bolduc looks good in that metric. Bolduc looks like a fast player. He's in the 80th percentile when it comes to top skating speed. He's in the 75th percentile when it comes to speed bursts over 20 miles an hour. Like he's a fast guy. And I think the Blues could really benefit. They're starting to falter a little bit. They're starting to stagger in their wild card chase. And I think injecting some energy with young players like Bolduc would help. It's not that you're giving up on the season and folding on the wild card race. It's that you're trying something that you think will help. And I think playing a guy like Bolduc isn't giving up because he is fantastic. I mean, he's been playing fantastic this season in his limited looks. And so, really, I think it just makes sense for them to pursue that in the interest of pursuing a wild card spot. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else you want to add on Bolduc before we talk about some other guys? If anyone has any thoughts on the Bolduc discussion in the chat before we move on, let us know. But yeah, anything else on Bolduc?
No, I think we should get into some of the other young players.
Sure. Yeah. So if anyone has any other thoughts on Bolduc in the chat, we can circle back if need be. But another guy that I want to talk about, sort of center a little bit of our conversation on him, is Alexander Texier. He might be someone who we had higher hopes for, and maybe isn't performing like we thought he would. We thought he'd definitely be getting more playing time than he has. Like I said, he's only got 12, 12 minutes, 27 seconds average time on ice. That's the fourth lowest average time on ice on the team. But he doesn't stand out quite as much as Bolduc does when it comes to his stats and his performance. But do you think there's a case to be made for him to just to get more playing time? Like, do you think, despite despite not being as standout as Bolduc in the minutes that he has played, do you think a case can still be made for Texier to play more?
I really like Texier. I really want to like Texier.
Yeah.
Every time I dive into his like stats, I just find like worse and worse stuff, and I'm not really sure like that he's shown a ton to deserve. He's got 8 points in 24 games, which is like on a per game basis slightly better. So I think trying him in the middle six um, could be interesting because I feel like he's mostly been down the lineup, either out of the lineup or on the fourth line. I think he deserves better than the fourth line. Like,
Hmm.
to be honest, I just don't know what Matthew Joseph is adding to this team that Texier wouldn't. I mean, he okay. That isn't fully true because Joseph actually is a good defensive forward.
Hmm.
So statement rescinded there. But I think you could pick your moments, or if the issue is goal scoring, maybe that's a guy you look to get out of the lineup. Or now, what I going back to one of our funny moments episodes and episodes ago, the Alexei Toropchenko point counter is up to 7.
Woo woo.
I really think that this is a guy who I don't know what he's adding to this team that Texier isn't. I mean, he's big. He's so big and he's fast. But pretty much outside of being a big and fast body, which Texier obviously can't provide, like Texier has one more point than him in half the games.
Yeah.
And Toropchenko's been pretty consistently a third liner,
Hmm.
if not fourth line with
Fourth
the
line.
Walker
Yeah.
Torpo Faxa, which
Yeah.
and maybe this is just my bias against Alexei Toropchenko, which I really want to like the guy, but I really feel like Walker drives so much of the offense of that line, and Faxa drives so much of the defense of that line, and they all do both. Obviously, all three
Right.
players are good both ways. That's why it was so effective. But I really feel like there just isn't much of an identity with Alexei Toropchenko, and Texier could be a shake up there at the very least. He is also they are the same age. Texier also can play center, so even though his
Yeah.
defense is really poor, so I don't know. I personally probably wouldn't play him as a center with just how bad his defensive metrics have been, but he can. Um, and so I'm interested to hear what you think on Texier, but I really think they should be trying him honestly, like middle 6 minutes.
Yeah. That's a good point that you brought up. Comparing him with Torpchenko. Torpchenko has the second lowest expected goal share on the team. Like he has been on a line that's pretty effective in the past. Like you said with Faxa and Walker, like that was an identity line and definitely like a gritty line, and we're liking what we were seeing from those three, especially early on. They were tough and grinding it out, but um, he's just not. I don't know, like he's just not someone that I'm excited about. And I feel like Alexander Texier is someone who I could be excited about and have been in the past. And like, yeah, I think also like I think it boils down to who do you think has more potential, because you're not getting much of a difference in actual on ice production. It feels like maybe Texier is a little bit worse defensively, um, but I think in such limited minutes, it's not going to make a huge difference. Um, so I think that could be really interesting, seeing him get some more of those minutes over Torpchenko. Um, but also like Texier got something going a little while ago. I want to say it was like late December is when he was starting to put together some solid performances and was earning more playing time. Uh, he had a goal and an assist in the Winter Classic. So I mean, yay, good for him. And he had a goal against Detroit like a week before that, and an assist the night before that. And so he was like getting some solid playing time. He had an assist against Columbus um, in that recent game. So like I don't know, like I feel like he has shown the potential to be better than a Toropchenko. And so I think you're right. I think that is a spot in the lineup where I think Texier could factor into the discussion, make things more interesting. Um, and then yeah, crazy good shot, like Matt in the chat said. Yeah, Texier's got a good shot for sure. One thing that I want to ask back to you, because here's where maybe I could see the conversation becoming more interesting is at the center position. I know you said you weren't super thrilled about that, um, partially because of the defensive metrics and Texier has always been the kind of player who like is a serviceable center but isn't really stand out, and it's he's maybe not a great center. Um, but is Oscar Sundquist either? Like let's be honest here. And isn't Texier like the kind of guy who could be around, like who we would want around longer term than Oscar Sundquist? Like, will you talk about these two guys for me, like Texier and Sonny? Like, what do you think here? I mean, yes, Texier might not do great at center, but neither is Sonny. And is he even like, does he even deserve playing time at this point?
It sucks because Sonny is such a fan favorite for 2019, and just like
Yeah,
he's just a guy that is just like so, I don't know, lifts your mood, lifts your spirits, even having
yeah,
never met him in person. But no, Oscar Sundquist is definitely okay. I shouldn't say definitely. In my opinion, I think Oscar Sundquist is one of the biggest detriments to this team. He is producing on the likes of guys like we talked about, Toropchenko, Texier, Ryan Suter, who has beat for by a couple points. Radek Faksa, he has the same amount of points as Nathan Walker. So definitely down the roster minutes, but all while playing center position and while playing as the third line center, often taking up more minutes early in the game and then will get benched. Also, he has 9 points. The other thing different about Sunquist to a lot of these other guys, he has 28 penalty minutes, which is a lot of penalties in minutes, I should say. It's fourth on the team.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, that's
yeah,
really hard to manage when you're a third liner and you're putting up that staggeringly high amount, putting us at a disadvantage when our special teams are already so poor. The
yeah,
thing with Sonny was that he used to be like able to win down low. I mean, he still is able to win down low and forecheck in the offensive zone, but in the defensive zone, he's just giving like very little, and offensively, he's really giving nothing. Especially because he's not winning down low with guys like Ivan Barbashev behind him. It's like Matthew Joseph, the aforementioned. So, yeah, I totally think I, uh, you know, wish nothing upon the person, but I
yeah,
do think that Sunquist, as a player, just should not really. This is a extreme statement to make, but I don't really think he should be getting ice time. I think he should be a guy out of the lineup working to get back in because he has just been truly that much of a black hole. Again, like as the third line center, it would be one thing if he was, playing bottom six wing minutes. You could swap him out with a guy in AHL. Like this is a crucial position to the structure of the team. Playing over
yeah,
Radek Faksa, who has like the same amount of points and is way better defensively. So
yeah.
yeah, I. That being said, I still don't know Texier is the answer at center, but
Hmm.
like, why not? We know what Sunquist will give us. Texier really hasn't gotten his shot, so
Yeah,
I would be totally okay if they made that switch.
yeah. It's always a tough, like a tough situation when a fan favorite or former fan favorite, like their on ice performance or on the field performance causes the fan base to sour a little bit. So it is tough to see. And like you said, I wish nothing but the best for Oscar Sundquist the person, but I agree. I don't think he is. I don't think he's the guy. Maybe elevate Radek Faxa and play Texier on the fourth line. I don't think you are damaging your team that much because I mean, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like it's not like that's super, difference making ice time there, but what do I know? Uh, Someone else in the chat said, bottom 6 minutes for Texier. Yeah, I think that's probably where we'd want him and where he should slot in, especially yeah, make room for Dvorsky once he comes up. And it maybe seems like I mean, do you think they're sort of holding out hope that they'll be able to call up Dvorsky and provide some more center depth, or do you think maybe they'll try to address the center position on the trade market? We'll probably do another trade market centered episode, but like, should they? I mean, really, there's not a good answer, right? There's not a good answer at the center position. This is an issue that we've pointed to the Blues having for a long time now, their lack of center depth, and so Sonny's not great, but there isn't a whole lot there anyway, and that's sort of why we're saying why not Texier because he's a younger guy. But like, what do you think they should do here, right? They take Sunquist out, for example, right? I think we agree that's someone who shouldn't be playing as much as he is. What do they do? Is it Texier? Do they call someone up? Um, do they trade for someone? What do you think is the right course of action here?
I don't really know that an acquisitional trade is the right course of anything until Brendan Saad is moved off the team. Because as it stands, the Blues right now have 3.5 in cap space, so they'd either have to somehow find a 3C that they could get a team to retain like 20% or 30% of their salary or something. And at that point, you're talking about giving up a pretty decent prospect. I don't know. Like, I think just being realistic with where this team is at, I don't think a trade is where I would go. I think switching it up
Okay.
for sure. I don't see why. Maybe I'm being short sighted here, but I don't see why Foxa couldn't be elevated to the third line.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he's been fine and he's producing and he's a stalwart defender. So at least giving more minutes to a good defender versus a bad one is yeah, a plus, obviously.
Yeah.
Real good analysis there. But yeah, I mean, and then in terms of the 4C, maybe that's where Texier slots in. Sunquist as a 4C is certainly a lot less like I'm trying to find a less mean word to use, but a lot less bad of a idea to me than Sunquist as a 3C. Um, maybe you try. I don't know. I'm kind of throwing stuff at the wall at this point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, I do think that Fox is probably my bet for 3C and fourth line. Honestly, like again, if fourth line is your problem that you can't figure out on an NHL team, there's worse problems to have.
I mean, I will say, like, in Sonny's defense here, because we've been a little bit mean to him tonight, like, his defensive stats are okay. Like, the not his personal defensive stats, but when he's on the ice, the team, like, they're not giving up a ton of expected goals. They're not giving up a ton of scoring chances or high danger chances. Um, but I think that's the kind of guy that you like is that's the kind of guy that should be playing on the fourth line, not the third line. He should not be getting as many minutes as he is. That's the kind of guy that just locks it down a little bit. If you need some defensive help with a lower line, make that the fourth line. He's just a black hole offensively. He's doing nothing to help out a player like Bolduc, who he's playing with, who despite the line mate is still like generating a lot of good individual stats or the other players around him for that matter. So, I mean, it is tough. It is tough, but I think not because he has for Texier, not because he has necessarily earned it with his performance, but because of who he could be. I do want to see him get more minutes before like a Dvorsky is called up, because at that point I think you're kind of just, you know, giving up on Texier at the center position. So I think why not try it, especially if they're trying to shake things up and try something different? Why not see what's there for a little bit? Um, but yeah,
The
and I think
Dvorsky
that
button is an interesting one too.
for sure, and that's one that we've talked a lot about, and we'll continue to talk about, because he looks good, but I don't think it's time yet, honestly. So I think giving Texier a little bit more of a chance at the center position, would be something that, you know, could could be exciting. You know, you never know until you try it. So that's something that um, I think they should do at least for a little bit. Before we close out, I want to, throw the rest of our younger players in a bucket here. You know, anyone else that you think maybe should be seeing more playing time. Anyone that you think is interesting that you want to talk about, whether it's the Tyler Tuckers of the world, Scott Perunoviches. We already talked about Alexei Torpchenko, so I mean he's a youngish guy that, we could have talked about, but we don't have to. I mean, Bolduc's the youngest guy on this team, so I mean he's really the the big one. But I mean, anyone else like Matthew Kessel, anyone like that that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I think we talked ad nauseum about Scott Perunovic.
Yeah,
It just feels like his time's over, and that is what it is. Wow, Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway are the two of the four youngest players on the team.
yep, it's
That's something
crazy.
exciting. Uh,
Yeah, that is
Tucker
exciting.
Tucker's been good. I think of the names you listed, Tucker's been the most exciting for me, in that he's
Okay,
like a fine third pair defenseman.
yeah,
Which after last season, I will totally eat crow and say it like this offseason. I'm sure there's a take somewhere if you really go looking where I say Tucker isn't isn't that good. He's been a
yeah,
fine third pair defenseman, and
yeah,
that's valuable. That's fine, especially for a young guy like him. That's awesome.
yeah,
So of the rest of them, I don't know. I think we talked about Tex, and
yeah,
everyone
for
else is
sure.
still fighting for a bubble spot on the roster. So.
Yeah, I love I I love natural stat trick, and I love seeing how these guys measure up. I mean, Tucker not only looks good, as a third pair defenseman, he looks good offensively. Like the team when he's on the ice looks pretty good. He's got the third highest goals for percentage on the ice at 61.5%. Their expected goals percentage, he's got the third best, 55.49. So I mean, decent on both sides of the puck there, right? And then the team is generating 60% of the scoring chances when he's on the ice. Just dominating the game in that sense. And so really surprising what we're getting, especially considering how he did last season, and admittedly limited looks, but he wasn't someone that we were super excited about going into this season. Um, I think I was going back and looking through some of our past episodes, preparing for something that we're gonna do, soon, but um, I can't remember what it was exactly, but I do remember you saying something to the effect of, you know, Tyler Tucker is not good, or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, so it is, you know, good. It is a good feeling to be able to admit you're wrong in this sense, right? Because he
Mhm.
he does look good, and I'm glad that there is a young defenseman that is performing well. If it can't be Scott Perunovic, I'm glad it is Tyler Tucker. So. Um, Yeah, Tyler Tucker's goal when they were supposed to fight. Who was that
Yeah.
against Utah again? Um,
Yeah.
I can't remember who he was going to fight, but the guy dropped the gloves and they agreed to fight. And then Tyler Tucker was like, "Hold up, I got to do something real quick." And then yeah, scored a goal. It was pretty sweet. Um, well,
Very
sweet.
funny.
Anything else on Tucker, Perunovic, any of these guys?
Um, I don't believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sweet. I think that'll do it for us this time. If you have enjoyed our discussion here and enjoy Node News, we'd appreciate it if you would like this video and especially subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the best way to help us out. We're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you like audio, so you can follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen. That goes a long way as well. And if you want to see some fun graphics and reels, memes at times, but especially want to know when we're going live and if we're having any special guests on, the best way to stay up to date with us is to, again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also follow us on our socials at Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We post a lot of good stuff over there, so be sure to follow us over there. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. This has been a good discussion, and I hope we can encourage Jim Montgomery to play Zack Bolduc more. If you're watching Jim, if you're watching Monty, then you heard it here first. Play him more. All right. But I think that'll do it for us. We'll see you
Maybe
next
give us a
time.
retweet too, Jim.
Yeah, give us. Yeah, exactly. We'll see you next time. And of course, let's go Blues.
Let's go, Blues.